As he mentioned, I am running for LNC Chair. I don't know I haven't met everybody here before, but I think I've met several of you. At least virtually, I know I've met you over camera. I'll give you guys a little bit of a background about myself, and what I'd really like to do is just open up the floor after I tell you about me so that I can answer questions for you guys, because really any kind of position, board position is a position of service to the party, and so it's not really about me, it's about what I could do to help this party grow and to help our goals. So first, a little background about me. I have been practicing law 15 years. I do mostly business and employment law. I run my own business. I've been an entrepreneur for 10 years. And my background professionally is I actually represent small businesses, medium-sized businesses, nonprofits. I've served on a dozen boards over the years. And I help people deal with regulations all the time. It's particularly bad in California, which is where a lot of my practice still exists. But I have a lot of experience just dealing with groups of people who are trying to make things happen in the world and getting interference both from the government and just the restrictions that we have socially and legally. I also came and became active in the Libertarian Party in 2012. So just a little bit about how I became an active Libertarian. I've always been registered Libertarian since I was 18. I basically did that because I'm contrarian, like most of us. I was in the military. I was in the Navy for a year. I went to Annapolis, and I really did not like the military. I come from 3 generations of Navy, and I really respect the military, and I respect the military culture, but I was not a good fit. I did not like being told what to do, and I realized very quickly that I have a problem with war, and I was not impressed by all of our war machines. So after a year, I had a health issue come up, and so they offered me to leave, and I was like, all right, I'm out of here. So I went to school, I went to law school on scholarship, but during that time, I actually got married to an enlisted guy who served on a submarine. So I was a Navy wife for a bunch of years. And I did that and started practicing law. I got divorced. I'm now married to my second husband, Simon. He's over here. Simon is British, so we've gone through the whole immigration process. And we've had a lot of, I've seen a lot of the problems that you have with immigration, with the Patriot Act that prevents him from doing his career. And we've had issues of being, he got detained at the border, so we've had lots of fun going through that process. But anyway, I registered Libertarian because my first husband was like a staunch Republican, and so I just had to like piss him off and be a Libertarian. So that's how I registered, but I wasn't politically active until 2012. I came over with Gary Johnson. So how that happened is I wanted to get involved in politics, and my uncle, who is he's a Democrat, used to run campaigns for Democrats, tells me, you would really like this guy, Gary Johnson. So I look him up, and I'm like, yeah, he's right, I do like this guy. So I started volunteering for him, and this was when I first moved to Missouri. So I just called his campaign, said, hey, I'm going to Missouri, I'd love to volunteer and get involved. And so they said, great, we don't have a Missouri director, you're now the Missouri director. So I was suddenly doing stuff for the party, or for the campaign and campaigning. And about a month later, they said that they liked the job I was doing, and they made me the Midwest director. So I ran that campaign in 2012 for 13 states. The Midwest, I think, was the best region. We had the most volunteers, we had the most participation, we raised the most money, we have such good libertarians in the Midwest, and everybody here is hardworking. And so, I was really lucky to kind of be at the head of that and to get to know a lot of people. In the couple months before the general election, I think it was probably summer, so I would say probably around August or so, the campaign started getting sued for ballot access. I didn't know anything about ballot access, but I was like the lawyer on the campaign. So we got sued in Iowa, got notice on a Friday for Monday morning hearing. nobody could do it. So I got a call from the campaign manager, and he's like, hey, do you know a lawyer who could go to Iowa? And I was like, I'm a lawyer, as you know, and I'm like, just a couple, it's not that long of a drive. I could just drive from Missouri to Iowa. So the next thing I know, I was driving to Iowa to handle a ballot access lawsuit. Never did it before. I was calling like the media and trying to figure out like how to make this happen. And I showed up on Monday morning. The Republicans were the ones who were suing us. They flew out 3 lawyers from Washington, D.C., show up in really expensive suits. Like I know an expensive suit when I see one. You know, I used to work at a big firm. And I'm standing in front of the Secretary of State, and I stand up and I'm like, hi, I'm Alicia Dearn. I'm counsel for the Johnson campaign. And literally they would not shake my hands. They did this, walked right by me. So I had to kick their asses. That's what I had to do. So I did, and I did it on the radio. It went all the way to the Iowa Supreme Court, and we got ballot access in Iowa that year. After that, I got sent to several states. I went to Virginia, I went to Pennsylvania, I went to Alabama. They just sent me all over the place. And I won several ballot access challenges, and then when I started entering appearance, they started dropping the challenges. So we got on the ballot in all the states except for 2 that year, Oklahoma and Michigan, where we got kicked off, and I wasn't, I helped with that one, but I wasn't lead counsel, but we weren't able to win that one. So I was really shocked at the time to learn how difficult it is for us to get on the ballot. I was listening to you guys talk about your petitioning. I will make an effort to come out here and help you guys petition as long as I am free from work duties, because this state has one of the worst petitioning requirements. It's not the worst, but it's up there.
Second behind Georgia.
Yeah, it's bad. So that's when I became very passionate about libertarianism and the cause, because I also handled the lawsuit against the Commission on Presidential Debates, and I discovered that they're evil geniuses and that there's so many barriers to entry for us who just want our voices heard, who want a return to traditional American values, and by that I mean like federalism, small government, being left alone, being able to have your civil rights and, you know, your low taxes and your guns and everything that we all stand for. To me, that's what America started off as, and we've gotten away from that. And the people who want to bring it back to what makes us great as a country, not the Trump great, the real great, we are being harassed and prevented from having our voices heard. We're being limited from the media, we're being kept off the ballot, we're being kept off the debate stage, and it's wrong. So I became very passionate about the party after that. After that, I was on, after the 2012 campaign, I was on the litigation committee for the Libertarian National Committee. I represented the party in a couple of lawsuits. I represented the party in Alabama. We lost that case. I tried to do some stuff in California. And it's just been kind of a slog. I'm currently on the judicial committee for the LNC. And I just try to hop into stuff that's useful, that's good for my skill set, and help people out. I just finished a term as the San Diego County chapter chair. I was in California quite a bit, and that chapter had fallen apart and had broken off from the rest of the state, and so I went in to try to repair that. We completely redid the operations. I turned it over to a great group of people, and now that chapter is flourishing in a state that's, you know, mostly just Democrats at this point. So that's my background. And my reason for running for chair is, honestly, I just had so many friends tell me they were going to leave the party. That was it. So many people said that they were going to stop donating, that they weren't going to the convention, that they were leaving the party because of what was happening with Arvin and some other similar issues where they felt like everything we're doing is being worked against, and, you know, we're just wasting our time. And when enough people said that to me, I just felt like I have invested so much in this party. We have all invested so much in this party. I can't let good people go without trying to fight for them and fight for our forward growth. So that's all that's driving me to run. You know, I hope that I'll get to see some of you guys in New Orleans. So that's my basic pitch. What can I tell you about me, or what can I answer for you? Please, please do not be shy. Anybody? Yes, yes, please.
Well, I'll start it off.
Thank you.
You mentioned one of your main reasons of people leaving the party is to motivate you to try to run for chair. And I think I can speak for everybody here, especially the SOC members, when we've now issued two or three official statements from the Illinois Libertarian Party against ARBA.
Yeah.
What are you going to do as chair to make the LNC more of an advocate for the state organizations as opposed to its own mouthpiece of activism that is a detrimental force against the state organizations?
I think that's a great question. So I have a couple of answers to that. First of all, there is some history between a bunch of the state chapters and the national chapter where those relationships need to be repaired. And so one of my initiatives will simply be to work with as many of the state chairs and beyond the states, the counties and the local affiliates and the campaigns to try to repair as many of those relationships as possible so that we're not working at cross purposes. So it's just good old-fashioned relationship building. Second is, I think that, as chair, you get kind of a bully pulpit and you can talk to the media and you can use that to bring attention to what the local activists are doing, as well as our main issues. I would like to get us away from anything that's sort of a fringe issue that's going to turn off potential voters and focus on what it is that some of our candidates are doing and things that really matter to us, and as far as like, anti-war or certain economic issues and things like that. I think we need to put in place some criteria for picking parties that could use some help, who are going places, who are being very active and very successful, and sending resources, whether that's manpower, people, media, or whatever, to them, as well as campaigns. We have, hundreds of campaigns. We have, 51 state affiliates plus Puerto Rico. So we can't send resources to everybody. We just don't have enough. But there are definitely affiliates who are doing stuff, who are well organized, who the people are active, and I think we should be really encouraging them and encouraging the other affiliates to get up to that same speed. So, basic, a little bit of competition between them, really. Let me see what else. I really believe a lot of people talk about, well, this is a grassroots party. We are a bottom-up party. I actually do agree with that sentiment, but that doesn't mean that the LNC does nothing. It just means that where the work's really happening is the boots on the ground. I think that's how politics gets done. You guys are all sitting here making plans and going to do stuff. You're going to talk to your neighbors. You're going to go to a parade. You're going to petition. The LNC going to a meeting once a quarter isn't out there being active in that way. And so we serve as an organizational group. We serve to model good leadership, to set the tone for the party, to set the tone nationally, and to help everybody communicate with each other with data sharing and resources, and helping everybody get donors. The LNC should be functioning a little bit better in that regard. Right now, there's too many arguments about theoretical stuff, or there's bad blood between a lot of the locals. So I would like to see that fixed, and I think with some refreshment of the board, that will help. I hope that answered your question. I know it was a long answer.
No, it does.
Yeah.
Especially when you talk about, the LNC does have its role, it does have activism. It's not the boots on the ground. It's not the majority of the work that's being done. And I can say this from my own personal experience now, as being elected vice chair of the Illinois Party. Mm-hmm. My position is not there for my own individual voice to be heard.
Right.
That position is put forth for me to make everybody else's voice heard.
Right. I agree with you. As a chair, you get to talk on media and stuff, and I'm comfortable with that. But, I'm not like an attention-seeking person. I'm kind of an introvert, actually. So I don't see myself as doing this for any kind of self-aggrandizement. My ego will not be bruised if I don't win, for example. But I'm doing it because I have a skill set with understanding the law and understanding how all these things fit together with organization. I have relationships. I have relationships with media and relationships with business and throughout the party. And I'm good at mediating. You know, I mean, what I do for a living is I deal with conflict. So I can deal with people's issues and agendas and kind of get people on the same page. And so that's a skill set that sort of makes me good for this position, and hopefully helps everybody kind of continue to move forward so that everybody's talents can be best utilized. So. All right, another question. Yes, please.
So the Libertarian Party is kind of a grassroots party, so bottom-up party.
Right.
So, but sometimes there can be loose candidates
Yes.
in party, especially in Michigan, apparently.
Yes.
So what do you propose be done from the national level if the state affiliate won't handle less of that? Because I know people, including a personal friend of mine, actually had to leave the party.
Yeah.
Because there was stuff being used in custody disputes, like in family court.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I mean, there's definitely things that the national party can do. I do think we need to have some basic standards of conduct. You know, we are a voluntary association, and so when you join the party, everybody agrees, for example, to sign the non-aggression principle pledge. So we can have standards of conduct where we say this is what we expect for people who are representing us as a movement. I wouldn't be too heavy-handed with how a state affiliate would be handling stuff necessarily, but there's certainly like legal ramifications.
At the very least, is there a mechanism you would support to inoculate members of the party from such people if the state affiliates aren't doing anything?
Yeah, I think that we can, first of all, we can take a position, that we don't accept certain behavior. So behavior where we're threatening people, we're involving their children, we're involving law enforcement or whatever that is actually harassing somebody, I think we can and should take a position on that. It's funny, I was actually just answering a question about the harassment policy of the LNC. I can tell you, as somebody who handles harassment policies professionally, that our harassment policy does not comply with the law. It is not strong enough. So I would want to see us have a better policy that outlines what behavior we deem unacceptable. But again, I want to say there are intervening steps that we can take before we push somebody out of a party. I mean, if somebody's really bad, like we don't have to accept them into our group, but there are certainly things that we can do to lay pressure on people, to talk to people, to protect members without having to immediately expel people.
Right.
I would, want to see. Go ahead.
And one particular case I'm thinking of, I don't believe an individual is elected to be part of the national party, they're just part of the state party. But family courts just doesn't cluster it on itself.
Yeah.
They don't care because the burden of proof is so low.
Right. Right.
No perjury.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, that particular situation is a tough one. And I'm aware of people who've left the Michigan Party because of threats and stalking and things like that too. I mean, I would definitely encourage the Michigan Party to kind of clean house. You can disaffiliate. I mean, there's conversation about disaffiliating the Oregon Party because of lawsuits between the two factions. I don't know if you've heard of, know anything about that. Yeah.
The only message I've truly heard of from Michigan and Florida.
Yeah.
Oregon is Oregon.
Yes.
I'm from Oregon.
Are you? Yeah, I mean, the LNC obviously took the position of we're not going to get involved in that, but then the courts got involved, So I think that you can model good leadership behavior, and you can go and use relationships to kind of convince people to be better. And you can say to them, look, you're not going to be welcome in the party. You're not going to be welcome at the conventions if you don't stop doing X, Y, and Z. That is not happening. And so I would say I would like to see that. I would have liked to see that with Arvin. I would like to see that with anybody who's threatening another person. We don't have to tolerate that. That's my opinion on it. Yeah. Did that answer your question? Okay. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, newcomer, and
Okay.
very much so. So I was just curious, what would you say are the important platform planks of the Libertarian Party?
Okay, that's a good question. So from a national standpoint, it's going to be different than what I think people should be talking about locally at state levels, because everybody has local issues. But nationally, I would like to really focus on three main issues. One is anti-war. So the bombing of Syria, for example, was illegal, violation of international law, violation of our own treaties, and a violation of our Constitution. It's also not justified, and it's an immoral loss of life. I think we should be talking about that. We're the only party at this point. I mean, maybe the Greens are anti-war. I haven't heard them recently. But the Democrats and the Republicans are all for bombing Syria. And I think we should be standing up and saying, we don't agree with that. We want to get out of war. And the American people should be coming to the Libertarian Party on this one issue alone. So that'd be one of them that I would really hit hard. The second one I would hit hard would be tax and spending. I know that it's kind of a Republican thing to say, to tax and spend, but that's actually literally what our government is doing. It's so huge. We're $20 trillion in debt. They're just blowing money. We're all being taxed to death, and these tax refunds or tax revisions we got to the bill did very little. It did a little bit, but did very little. And so we should be talking about really yanking back that federal government and making them be responsible for how they spend our money, and not to take so much of it. I think that's another thing that people can all understand without, we don't have to say anarchy, taxation of stuff, privatize all the roads. We can just say, let's just tax less, and I think we can get a lot of people on board with that. The third one would be criminal justice reform. I use that very broadly. I'm very against the drug war. The drug war has caused huge problems with our foreign policy, with our immigration policy. We have huge incarceration rates. It's not just nonviolent offenders. It's costing us billions of dollars. It's ruining the lives of people in our cities and our minorities, as we can all witness just by going into the city. It's actually a human rights crisis, in my opinion. We incarcerate more. I think it's 20% of the incarcerated peoples in this world are in the United States, and we're only 5% of the population. So we have a huge incarceration issue, and it would solve so many problems. And I think that's another place where we can get people who are left-leaning to be interested. So I think taxes and spending, we can get right-leaning people. Incarceration, anti-war, we can get left-leaning people, and that's a good way for us to build a coalition on. The way I see it is, if we just got out of the wars, stop spending so much money and being in debt all the time, and stop putting so many people in jail, the country would be so massively improved that everybody would think libertarians are geniuses and all join us. So those would be the three issues I would pick. Yeah. Yes, sir.
So of course you're running to replace Nick.
Yes.
So is there something that Nick is doing that you feel you would do different, or do you feel it's more just something that you would do that Nick is not doing, or what? Basically, what's the motivation there, I guess?
So I think that Nick has made a leadership error in not throttling back Arvin and not speaking and listening to the constituents. So when I was chair of the San Diego party, one of the last things that I did was I sent a letter to the LNC saying, we actually lost donors. It was a military town. We were getting a lot of flack, even in the media. That was hindering our growth because of Arvin's statements. And this was before the most recent one. And so I sent a letter to the LNC, and we get ignored. And there's so much frustration. And so I think it got to the point where there were so many people who were complaining about it that Nick really needed to stand up and say, the Libertarian Party is not anti-vet. We're not, we're not for pedophilia, not to put a too fine a point on it. And we don't think that teachers should be murdered and school boards should be shot up. And that's not the Libertarian Party. And he does not speak for us as a movement. I think he should have said that. I think if he had done that, even if Arvin kept talking, so many people would have been satisfied that it would have stopped this just frustration and angst that we have going on. So I think a lot of people wouldn't have quit the party. We wouldn't have lost donors if we just stood up and did something like that. Nick, there's a lot of things that I like about Nick. I respect him, and I hope that he does well in his race for mayor of Phoenix. But the party's never had a chair for longer than 2 terms, ever in its history. I think that turnover is good in leadership. I think that he's now become embattled, and so he can't get stuff done as well. And I think that he likes to be above everything, and I think that's really good most of the time. It's certainly politically wise because people can't attack him so much. But choosing that over what was good for the retention of people in the party, I think, was a mistake, and not with as much fortitude as he should have had. But that's what I think. Yeah.
His retention of the high ground, you said you lost donors.
Yes.
Our party as a state, I can personally attest, has lost a few precinct committeemen that resigned because of that. And we lost our state secretary because of it. He had to resign because of those worthless actions and how he thought it could affect his employment. Yeah. Based upon it, and the fact that there was no review from basically the authority of national. Granted, I understand the LNC setup is every LNC rep is its own independent and equal entity representing their district and beholden to only their district. But I would hope that whoever becomes chair moving forward, as in your words, uses that bully pulpit to a point when necessary, instead of standing on technicality of, well, he has the right to say what he can say because, well, we're on equal footing, so who am I to tell that?
Right. Sometimes I feel like the Libertarian Party, especially at the higher levels, gets too legalistic with stuff. Sometimes there's just a practical approach that you have to take, and that approach is, this is what we stand for. We're not going to shy away from that. And yes, Arvin has the right for free speech. I absolutely would fight to the death for him to maintain his First Amendment rights. But when he stands as a vice chair, he's standing as a speaker for all of us, and he doesn't have a right to say stuff that harms the rest of us. And so that's the problem I have with it.
Well, what could you have done differently than the way Nick had handled it?
Well,
like I would have. If you were in that position, like a year ago, and then, there's like 3 or 4 incidents over the course of 18 months.
Yeah. I don't know, obviously, what Nick said to Arvin privately. I certainly would have talked to Arvin privately. I would have said stop. I actually did do that, but he didn't listen to me. But there would have come a point where, okay, I might have let it go by like once, maybe twice, but then there would have come a point where I would have stood up and said, Arvin is speaking for Arvin. That is not what this party stands for. And I would have made that a public pronouncement. I would have done it because it would have inoculated us in the media. I would have done it to improve morale with the rank and file. I just told everybody, look, we don't agree with this. This is not the party's position. Come to New Orleans and you can vote Arvin out. He did get censured, but the problem with the censure is that like the very next day, he quotes something from Roman Polanski. So he just kind of thumbed his nose at it. And I think that Nick should have said something.
Okay. I'm not a Nick supporter. I'm not going to New Orleans. I don't know what he could have or what anybody else would have or could have done differently other than standing up and making statements. You know what I mean? Like, I don't...
Right. I don't know that Arvin would have stopped, but I think it would have helped morale. I think it would have helped people stick around if we had taken more of a strong position against it. And it might have helped people with like their employment issues and things like that.
I don't have a question, but I just have a comment. I'll tell you why. Like me personally, Starwork found the time to attack the Mises Institute, Tom Woods, Bob Murphy, people and run around on radio shows and using his pulpit demanding they sign a "I'm not a fascist" petition, but he couldn't housekeep within his own party people that are advocating pedophilia and shooting teachers. So he selectively ran his own agenda when it felt. That's the way it seemed to me when it fit his need. Whenever he had something that he wanted to go attack somebody over, which was a complete non-issue, but then when he has serious issues in his own house, he was just like, no, that's not my job. Yeah. While protecting socialists, mutualists, and everybody else on the side.
Right. Some people say that like he was, voting his conscience when he didn't vote Arvin out, but he's also friends with Arvin, so I kind of wonder about that. I mean, he didn't tell me his reasons, but so.
All right.